Welcome to our Knowledge 20 Specialist Series. You'll hear first-hand stories from organizations that are turning to KPMG-powered enterprise and ServiceNow. Stay tuned to hear how they're getting work done in new ways and applying lessons learned to drive toward the future of work. Specialists from our KPMG advisory practice share how they have helped clients bake in large-scale transformation through learning in the flow of work, driving a minimal viable approach, and soliciting strong executive sponsorship.
Hello, this is Ann Smith, and welcome to the K20 Digital Experience. I am a Senior Director with KPMG. I've been working in the ServiceNow space for about 9 years, and I've had the opportunity to work with my colleagues that are joining us today on quite a few different implementations. All of us have worked in large global clients, clients that kind of break the borders of across the world, and helping them implement ServiceNow. And I think you're going to see that each of us brings a really unique perspective to the discussion. So let's go ahead and get started. Joe, as a leader in the practice and someone who's been in the market for a while, can you give us some perspective on how you've seen organizations achieve success leveraging ServiceNow for their transformation?
Sure, Ann. And I have been in the market for a long time. I think longer than most of you on the call. So I'll hold that against me. But I think the interesting thing about transformation is, that word is a word that gets tossed around loosely, and in some organizations, actually, it's almost a bad word, right? Because they've tried it so many times, and they, transformation has failed to live up to its promises. But I think one of the most important things that we found is that there are a lot of different things can impact and affect the success of transformation, especially in a large, global, complex organization or environment. It's everything from the strength and degree of executive sponsorship down to the quality of the people on the team, down to the expectations that they're setting with the business users and even the politics of the organization, et cetera. So there's lots of different factors that are involved in successful transformation. Certainly how you approach the project, and understanding these is critical to success. So a couple things I'd highlight from my experience. I talked about executive sponsorship. Obviously everyone knows the importance of that to getting a project started and to getting a project funded. But I think where the rubber hits the road in terms of transformation is how strong that sponsorship is. It's important to understand what competing projects are going on in the organization. You're trying to do something, in this case with ServiceNow, and transform, whether it's IT operations or even into HR and cyber and other areas. What else is the organization doing? What else are the resources you need and the attention you need? Where are they being drawn into other programs or projects? And understanding that. And so timing is part of this too, in terms of your success. Is there a history of successful transformation? I mentioned that transformation, right, the T word, can be kind of frowned upon in some organizations because it gets used so often, and perhaps there's been large transformation failures. So all of this means, before you set off on transformation, we encourage our clients to really take the time to understand what you're getting into, understand these different levers and headwinds, and plan for them appropriately. If you're going to have battles, whether they're political or otherwise, make sure you plan for those and understand how you're going to tackle them. If you're going to face competition from other projects, look at your timing, look at your demand on resources, and make sure it's appropriate. And just really, focus on some simple things. Wynn and Chris are going to talk about a couple key areas where we have identified as really required for success. And one is this idea of an MVP or sticking to a minimal viable product, especially for kind of a phase one. The other is organizational change management and how critical that is. And what OCM means today is very different than what it used to mean. So how do you leverage new technologies and new methodologies in that space to be successful? And then even some things about design thinking and really focusing on business outcomes, not so much features and functions, but what are you trying to accomplish, and what is the business trying to do, and how can you help them through this transformation get what they need to get done faster, more efficiently, less costly. Those are the kind of things that we really focus on with our leads on the client side in teeing up any transformation project for success.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
We're really trying to pull together not just process, but the technology implementation as well as the human element there. So we definitely want to, think about all of those aspects as we're proceeding forward with the transformation or with any large global project. I really appreciate your insight, though. We've definitely had some projects, haven't we? When Joe mentioned a few points or factors in successful transformation, which ones do you think is perhaps most critical to achieving transformation?
Thanks, Anne. One thing that I've found is really important in what I've seen really help drive successful implementations is leveraging the concept of minimum viable product, or MVP, like Joe had brought up earlier. What that really means is identifying the capabilities, the use cases, solutions, integrations, data, user groups, et cetera, which are absolutely critical to cutting over onto the ServiceNow platform from your current tool set. So it's establishing that initial list of what you think that basic solution looks like, and then working towards it. The benefits that we've seen of leveraging this model are, one, it's going to drive you to work on the highest value features, functionalities, data sets, et cetera. Right? You're not really going to spend any time on those low value requirements, because what you're going after is the things that you truly absolutely need to leverage the system. Two, it helps you prevent scope creep. It helps you stick to deadlines and ultimately go live sooner rather than later. And lastly, it's going to help you stick to out of box. There's requirements to add 10 extra fields to your incident form because you had them in a previous system. Asking that question, are these truly things we need for MVP, can help you drive to the out-of-box solution without adding any extra customization. So one example of when we recently did this is we were doing an implementation for a large financial institution, and we were able to go, from start of the project to going live with, very complex discovery, full ITSM implementation, including hundreds of catalog items, service mapping, double-digit number of integrations in with 8 2-week sprints. So in a pretty short time frame with a relatively small team as well. So we've seen this leveraging that approach work many times.
Yeah, when you and I had a client we worked on together, a large bank, and that kind of, and I think it's key, that becomes a mantra of the program, and it really kind of gives you the guide rails to stay on track and to really be critical about, hey, let's manage our scope, and let's keep things moving in the direction we want to. I mean, the biggest, one of the biggest failures or reasons for failure of transformation is scope creep and the inability to kind of drive towards outcomes quickly and effectively and hit your commitments. And that won't happen unless you really stick to that core MVP approach.
The example that Joe had mentioned around the large financial institution, we had a short time frame. We were doing a fairly complex implementation. So we were doing discovery with 20 plus classes. We were doing service mapping, full ITSM suite with hundreds of catalog items, double-digit number of integrations, importing tons of different data. And, with a relatively small team, we were able to, to do an initial go live for that scope in 16 weeks. And I think the only reason we were able to meet that goal of cutting over, which we had a deadline we needed to, was because we stuck to that idea of MVP.
That's awesome, Wynn. It sounds like that MVP approach is really critical to use that lens as you're, beginning your project. Is there another secret ingredient that you have that we should be keeping in mind as well?
Yeah, we another thing that I think really helps driving these large-scale transformations is to try to embed design thinking within the implementation team and within the project team. And what we mean by that is really just, how can we bring good design principles to the implementation team and to, everyone who's involved. So I'll just share a couple of good design principles that we like to go with. So the first one I'll share with you guys is using the vision validation approach. So what that means is You want to look around the industry, look at best practice, look at, implementation partners, look at out of box, leverage ServiceNow resources to really try to find a vision for where you want the platform team and where you want the associated processes to be, and use that as your starting point to then just validate it. So you're not, coming in with this list of 10,000 requirements that you currently have, right? You're saying, what does good look like? What does good practice look like? What are other industries doing? And what's maybe the 20% that we need to tweak to get us there, right? So we also call it kind of the 80-20 rule. We're gonna, 80% is already there for us. Other industries, other companies in ServiceNow have figured it out. What is that 20% that you need to tweak for yourself? The second design thinking approach that we've seen be really successful is focused on outcomes and use cases rather than requirements or solutions. As you go through the journey of an implementation, lots of requirements come up. We think it's very important, instead of saying, I need this field on this form, instead of someone just describing what the requirement is or what the feature is to take a use case approach. The use cases, we had an incident form in a previous tool, and it had these 30 fields. So in ServiceNow, we need these 30 fields to go, build or configure those additional ones. But it's to look at use cases and to look at outcomes. So it's not, I need this field. It's, as an incident manager, I need to understand how many times my incidents are getting reassigned so that I can follow up with those teams to ensure that they understand appropriate escalation paths. What that's going to do for you is a couple things. Is one, it's going to drive you to an outcome, the outcome of, being able to have proper escalations. And two, it's going to, as you build out this system, you'll be able to tie the capabilities that you have back to the reason why they were implemented, right? You can see that, this solution was added to support this, instead of having features and functionalities built that aren't tied back to true use cases.
So Chris, turning to you, would you mind sharing some of your secret ingredients for change management and employees, what we need to think about for large-scale transformations?
I can't give you the entire recipe, but I can definitely share 3 of the following ingredients that clients really need to think about regarding transformation. So the first one is experiential learning. With the wave of multi-generational workforces that companies are currently experiencing within their organizations, and with the wave of YouTube videos and other types of learning activities, employees want to be able to not just listen to something or see something, but they want to be able to interact with it. And so what's really important is to build an experiential learning process for your employees. And that could be anything from gamification that you would include within training that would be allowing employees to see the system. It could also just be what we currently do today and see a lot of is knowledge checks and things like that. But ultimately, whatever that, in the case of a system implementation, you want to give the employees a chance to actually utilize the system and to actually not just utilize it, but actually utilize real world cases that apply to them and that will actually mean something to them. Because that's what's important, is you want them to be able to walk away being able to say, I know how I can use this for my job. And so building that experiential learning is extremely important because of the fact that you hit all the different learning styles for adult learners. You people who are able to listen, hear, see, and touch. Secondly is when we're talking about building a learning plan, what we see a lot of clients do is they develop and build and then test, and at the very end you put in all of this training right before you go live with that system. What we recommend clients do and what we see great success in with some of our clients currently is building in early and frequent learning throughout the development and build period. That way, when you are finished building something, we can actually have like show me sessions or office hour events or learning activities for the employee base to be able to go in and actually look to see what's being built, how does this change affect them, what does this look like, and so they're able to put a face to things. They're able to actually see how it's actually going to impact them from a daily work standpoint. This also allows employees to gain comfortability and fluidity with the new system. And it engages them in a way that it makes learning interesting and it makes learning in the flow of work. Meaning that as you build it, you are teaching them how to do it, and then you build something else, you add on to that, and you teach them how to do that. And that also allows companies to minimize the amount of level of effort of like a train-the-trainer aspect, where you're needing employees to spend a lot of time completing this training, and you're able to spread that out over a larger period of time, therefore reducing risk of having to take an employee off of what they're currently doing and putting them towards training. Not only that, but as you're doing this, employees are able to give feedback. And this leads to my third point, is structured channels for users to provide feedback. That's extremely important because employees just don't want to be told what it is that they're going to change. They want to be a part of that overall experience and feel like they're contributing back towards it. And so by including learning frequently throughout the develop and build period, employees are actually kind of ad hoc testers in that case, and your learners are able to give you that feedback right away so that you can apply it quickly instead of doing all of your testing and then you get into training and then you figure out, oh, we're getting all this feedback from employees, and some of it's very positive, but then some of it is things like, oh, if we'd known that sooner, maybe we could have built that into our workflows, or we could have built that into the next sprint. And so we recommend to clients is that as you're allowing the employees to frequently touch the system, giving them that feedback channel. And you can do that through debrief sessions, through surveys. I know ServiceNow also has a great survey tool that they utilize. And so that's something that you can consider utilizing throughout. We find this to be a very big practice because employees are appreciative of being able to give that feedback, and it makes them feel like they're partnering in with this and not just being the recipients of the change that's happening. They're actually helping to mold the change, and that helps for buy-in and overall adoption. And that's very important so that you can minimize the productivity dip that typically we see whenever you kind of leave training at the very end. Client is experiencing their employees having to take more time to get used to the system. If they're able to get used to the system throughout, then it minimizes that productivity dip even more so and allows you to get to more sustainable environment right away. So those are the secret ingredients I have for organizational transformation. Back to you, Anne.
That's awesome. So Joe, coming back to you, I know we often work with clients who are using ServiceNow. You know, a lot of times they want to refresh their current platform, or they're going through a merger, other consolidation effort. Is there anything unique about those types of situations?
Interesting question. Yeah, I mean, as ServiceNow has penetrated the market right over the last 10 years, you know, we're more and more often working with clients who already have ServiceNow implemented. So some were early adopters and didn't have governance in control or to control things, let's say, or maybe they, you know, because of valid purposes, had to build out and customize some things in the platform that now are more, you know, available out of the box. So we are working with a number of clients who are looking to refresh, kind of reset their implementation, and that's an opportunity for transformation. There's also quite a bit of merger acquisition, you know, which leads to instance consolidation. More and more, we're seeing companies that both have ServiceNow come together. We're seeing multi-divisional, you know, organizations that maybe when they implemented had multiple instances of ServiceNow, they're bringing those together. You know, any of those types of opportunities, and to your point, and we're seeing more and more of them, are also opportunities to transform. And a lot of times the technology uplift or implementation or tweaking or refreshing or whatever you want to call it is the catalyst for something more transformative, which is, since we're going to take a step back on our technology and kind of relook at things, let's take a step back on how we are running our business, the business of IT. So those all represent great opportunities for transformation.
Well, thanks to each one of our transformation specialists for sharing your insights to help our listeners reach success with large-scale transformations. What I want to do is close with each of you providing that one special thing that you want our listeners to take away. Win?
Yeah, I think it's really important for those going through their implementation journey to constantly remember that you don't need to have every requirement that comes up in place to go live. Focused on high-value MVP requirements go live, and then iterate as you go.
That's perfect. Chris, how about you?
I would say the one thing that I would want our clients to take away is that systems are now designed to be more intuitive. So trust in that intuitive design of the system, and that your learning experience should be tailored to your employees' roles so that they have a more meaningful experience and they have a more meaningful takeaway as they enter into this learning environment, as they enter into this new system that you're wanting to utilize for their daily work.
Perfect. All right. And how about you, Joe?
The last thing I'll say is some people think, actually a lot of people think that, if you move from just doing a project to doing something that's quote unquote transformative or is transformational, that you immediately have doubled or tripled the time it's going to take to do anything. It comes down to a mindset and a buy-in and the right executive support. And you can transform significantly in 6 to 12 months as opposed to, what was historically 2 to 3 years. So I think those are really important points that I'd love for our audience to kind of take away and maybe think about transformation as in a new way. It's not something that is necessarily negative, but something that can be embraced and can really help the organization as well as the individual.
Thank you, everybody, for your time and participating in the K20 Digital Experience. I want to thank you, Joe, Wynn, and Chris, for joining me. Definitely check on our other KPMG channels for our practitioner-led sessions. But in addition to that, I want you to have a great K20 experience and everybody stay safe.
Thank you for joining us. We look forward to bringing you additional insights, lessons learned, and much more as we continue the ServiceNow Knowledge 20 digital experience. In the meantime, learn more by visiting us at visit.kpmg.us/K20 Digital.